Have you ever met a black belt that you didn't feel was worthy of their rank? Today we're going to discuss a common debate topic among modern martial artists, and that is, should the black belt be obtainable by everybody? And before I dive too deeply into everything, I do want to stress that when I do videos like this, I'm not claiming that my viewpoint is 100% right and everyone else is wrong. I really like starting discussions and I like talking about these kinds of things, and I'm a very easygoing person, and I don't deal in absolutes when I'm trying to discuss things with someone. I don't like arguing, I like discussing. So I think there are some different viewpoints on this topic of whether or not any individual should be able to walk up to a school and eventually earn their black belt in X martial art. Let's go ahead and back up a little bit and take a look at ancient martial arts before any kind of belt system existed. Wearing a specific belt color as your rank is a fairly new concept among martial artists. I don't know the exact history, I didn't research it for this video, but I do believe that karate and judo were among the first arts to implement belt systems. In my opinion, belt systems were implemented to have some sort of organization among practitioners of a certain art. You know, if you had tournaments between different schools that, taught differently, you had to have some sort of way to quantify the experience between different opponents, other than just amount of years that you've been training, because that can be very inconsistent. Belts were supposed to be a comprehensive tool to put together, how many years you've been training, but how consistently you've been training, which would equal the amount of skill that you have, and then natural ability and everything would go into that. So you can kind of have some sort of fairness among different opponents. Now, if you fast forward to today and modern martial arts across the world, I think almost every belt system has been completely commercialized. And what I mean by that is, yes, it still has the original intent of trying to gauge experience. If you go to any kind of tournament nowadays, that's still how they bracket all the groups, is by belt rank, because they really have nothing else to go off of. But when I say commercialized, I honestly believe it's really just a business tool now. It's something tangible that you can present to students, especially kids. That's like an incentive to keep going and going until you reach that goal of black belt. And I get it, if there wasn't any kind of system in place, you'd be showing up to class and just kind of mentally keeping track of your progress. It's a lot easier to visually see the accomplishment that you have if you have a row of belts from what you started to where you are now. And I agree that it's a wonderful tool to help kids, especially to realize that what they're doing means something, and it's rewarding them for the hard work that they put in. But there are many schools out there that, as long as you show up and you pay your tuition and you test every X amount of months to get your next belt, that you can just basically pay your way to get your black belt. And that's what a lot of people call McDojos, and I would agree to an extent, but you can't place judgment on any school or location if you don't actually know what's happening there. Now, I will say that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu does do a great job with their system, in that it's pretty uniform across the board. If you have a certain belt rank, you can travel to pretty much any gym around the world, and you're going to be on the same level as that belt color in any other gym that you attend. But the arts that I practice, for instance, Taekwondo, there is an official belt system that's deemed by the Kukiwan, but it's not universally accepted and practiced, and a lot of schools still do their own thing. And in Hapkido, it's even less organized. There's no universal governing body over our art. There's just dozens and dozens of different federations that different masters have started on their own, and they do things their own way, and they do their belt system their own way. And I say all that to say, if all these schools have different color belt systems, then by default, they're going to have different routes to get to black belt. So don't take this the wrong way, but having a black belt in and of itself is meaningless. Meaning that your black belt doesn't tell anyone else, except for maybe those at your own school, anything about you as a martial artist. But that's only in a relative sense. If that's where you place the meaning of your rank in what others think of you and what others perceive you as, then yes, it's going to be totally meaningless. I think those of us that truly understand know that it's about a lot more than that, and it's about the work that we know we put into our training, and if we internally feel that it's something we earned, then it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks, right? Not everything has to be that outward, and we don't have to show off every part of ourselves, even though that's the social media culture that we're living in. A true martial artist is humble and wouldn't worry about that. So I haven't really answered the question yet, should the black belt be obtainable by everyone? I generally believe that yes, if someone is willing to put in the training and the work, no matter what their natural skill level is, they should be able to eventually make it to black belt. Some people are just physically never going to be able to fight off a wave of 50 enemies being thrown at them or something crazy like that. But we have to understand that the black belt title is a lot deeper than just that physical aspect. As we discussed, there's no one way to get a black belt because every school you go to, it's going to be a different journey. But I think what all schools should have in common is that from the beginning of your training until you reach black belt, there should be a substantial amount of self-growth, maturity, physical and mental strength, perseverance, and all those good things that we know we're supposed to teach the next generation. And no, it's not as easy as, he got better, I'm gonna give him a black belt. There needs to be a curriculum in place that students have to achieve a certain amount of skills and training, and they have to learn a certain amount of whatever is in that art to make it to black belt. But that's not where our focus should be. Our focus should be on developing as people and developing as contributions to society, positive ones. We've already agreed that the black belt title is meaningless in a sense. So if you get offended that somebody has a black belt that you don't think is physically deserving of it, or if they can't handle themselves in a sparring match against someone that you should think they should be able to, that shouldn't bother you. If that makes you feel that your rank is threatened, then you don't have your rank for the right reasons. Whether or not they deserve it is not your call to make. We far surpassed the times where these rankings have had that comparative type of meaning. Now, I don't necessarily agree that like a 5 or 6 year old should be able to get a black belt, even if they started at a young age. Whether or not they put the time and practice in, I would have it in my system to where it would take a little longer so that once they get to black belt, it's at an age where they can understand it a little better. I don't have an exact cutoff age, but I go by that every individual is different and you should assess each of your students differently. And yes, I have seen black belts before that don't display the type of skill that I would expect a white belt to learn in their first week of class. But if they're not my student, then I don't know their story, and I shouldn't feel the urge to take their rank away from them. And it certainly shouldn't make me feel any different about the black belt that I have. Only I know every step that I've taken in my martial arts journey to get to where I am. I always tell my students that the black belt is really the beginning of a martial arts journey. That's where those that have a real love for martial arts and a real passion for it begins to really hone in and develop their skills. Before I got my black belt, martial arts was just another activity that I used to do. I tried baseball and soccer and all the other sports. And once I got my black belt, I started to realize a lot more, and that's when I really fell in love with martial arts and it became a lifelong journey. But as I've said before, where I do draw the line is if you have an instructor that's very manipulative and just out for money, that basically brainwashes their students into believing that they're the best martial artists in the world, that they're untouchable when they really aren't teaching them any useful skills at all. That can cause people to get hurt down the line, and that's something that we all need to work to eradicate. The overall point that I'm trying to make is that we as martial arts practitioners and teachers should be striving more to invest in people and lift them up and make them better, not just physically but mentally, and stop focusing on all these tiny nitty-gritty details that in the grand scheme of things don't matter. Let me just clarify the point that I was trying to make here. I'm not saying that the self-defense techniques and the body control abilities that you learn in martial arts are worthless and they don't matter, but what I mean is that you as a teacher might have a different teaching style than the next schools, and you might feel that your methods and that the techniques that you teach are better than theirs, and that very well may be true. But that doesn't mean that we go and bash the other school and say that their belts are useless and that their black belts don't deserve what they have. Constructive criticism is good, but I feel that there's too much of that greater than thou attitude out there, and there's just a lot of pinpointed negativity just for the sake of being negative. And that's what I'm addressing here. Anyway, enjoy the rest of the video. Every single one of us, myself included, would be so much better off if we took any negativity that comes into our lives and do our best to turn it around into something positive. That should be our goal each and every day. But I hope you enjoy martial arts as much as I do, and I hope you have something to say on this topic. Go ahead and put it in the comments and we'll have a discussion. Let's be positive influences to our community. Thanks for watching and keep training.